So a few months ago, I was in PetSmart looking around to see what they had, and I always check out the reptile section, and I came across a care guide pamphlet thingamajiggy that they had, and in there was this getting to know your chameleon care guide, and I was like, ooh, that'd be a fun video to say like what information is correct, what information is incorrect. But then this went in my junk drawer in my kitchen, and so I kind of forgot about it, but I cleaned that out the other day, and so now we're going to be going over what I think is accurate and inaccurate information in this care guide. Okay, so starting from the front, it says, getting to know your chameleon, has a cute picture of a baby veiled chameleon. At the bottom it says, developed and improved by PetSmart veterinarians. So, let's see how this goes. Looking on the inside, it says, calm and colorful chameleons. I don't think I would ever describe a chameleon as calm. Like Apollo and Luna are pretty calm, but commonly kept chameleons like Panther Veils and Jacksons usually aren't calm. They're usually pretty defensive, which people interpret as aggressive behavior. They are colorful, so I'll give them that, but I don't think I'd use the word calm, but that's just my 2 cents on it. Okay, it says veiled chameleons originate from Saudi Arabia. To my knowledge, veiled chameleons originate from Yemen, which is a different country than Saudi Arabia. It says Jackson's chameleons hail from East Africa. And I believe that's true. Usually Tanzania and Kenya are usually where you'll find like wild native Jackson's chameleons. Experience level advanced. I would definitely agree with that, that they're advanced. It says the size, chameleons grow up to 18 inches or 46 centimeters. While I've never taken a tape measure to any of my chameleons because I usually just weigh them by weight, I would say like Neptune, if I was using my arm, is probably like yay big plus tail. I don't know if that's quite 18 inches. And they've been talking about Veils and Jacksons, but so give or take on the size, but I feel like that's like probably a good ballpark. Lifespan, chameleons live for approximately 5 to 7 years. I would say that's like the textbook answer. Diet. Chameleons are insectivores, meaning that their diet consists primarily of live insects. Correct. Then it says, however, veiled chameleons require a small amount of vegetables too. So I'm kind of confused on how an animal can be an insectivore, but then also require vegetables, because then you're no longer just an insectivore, right? So the correct information is that chameleons are insectivores, and there's this idea that veils eat fruits and vegetables, or that's a necessary part of their diet. That's totally not necessary. You can just feed your chameleon exclusively live bugs and insects, and they will be a happy camper. So next up on this care sheet is they have a picture of a terrarium and give like descriptions or identify the different parts of the terrarium. I'll put a picture up on the screen hopefully so you guys can get a closer look at this. But it says that you have the terrarium, check, you definitely need that. A screen lid, that's helpful so then the UVB can penetrate through the screen. It won't penetrate through glass, so I agree with that. It says you need a heat lamp and UVB bulb. Yes, you definitely need, doesn't say what kind yet, and I think hopefully it'll get into that, but you'll need both. It says plants and decor. Yep, you're gonna need that. It says reptile, carpet, or coconut fiber, and this is where I disagree. My preference is for chameleons to be kept on a bare bottom with no substrate. The reptile carpet will just retain moisture, and if your chameleon poops on that, then like bacteria and poop particles can be left behind. It's really not recommended for chameleons at all. The coconut fiber is also not recommended because it can cause impaction, or just an increased risk for impaction, because say a bug landed on the coconut fiber and then your chameleon went to eat that bug and ingest some of that, like they're not set up to process that. So my recommendation is bare bottom substrate, and I have a video on what substrates I recommend, so I will link that down in the description box below for you guys. Okay, then it says that you need a water dish. Giant X for that one. You do not need a water dish. Chameleons don't drink from standing water. Instead, they drink from moving water, which is why we missed our chameleons, so you do not need a water dish. It says you need a hygrometer and a thermometer. Yes, you definitely need both of those to check your numbers. A basking site beneath the heat lamp. Yes, also important. And then it says a misting bottle. So I'm kind of confused why they're providing a water dish and a misting bottle, because if you have a misting bottle, that would provide water for your chameleon. So those are my recommendations on that. And then down at the bottom here, it has different, it says target range. So it says day temperature, cool side, 7 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 to 27 degrees Celsius. So I would say low 70s to mid 70s would be a good target, like the middle and down below of your chameleon's enclosure. And then it says day temperature basking spot, veiled chameleons 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's toasty, which is 32 to 38 degrees Celsius for all my Celsius peeps out there. And then it says Jackson's 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 to 29 degrees Celsius. So let's talk about this for a minute. A basking temperature of 90 to 100 degrees would fry your chameleon. And let's like take a step back. If this is being sold, if chameleons are being sold at PetSmart and this care guide is sitting next to the chameleon, PetSmart sells baby chameleons. I've never seen a full-grown adult chameleon. So not only is 90 to 100 degrees way too hot for an adult chameleon, but it's extra way too hot for a baby chameleon. So the correct temperatures that you would want for a veiled chameleon is a basking temperature of 85 degrees for males and 80 degrees for females. And the lower temperature for females is to help reduce clutch sizes for their eggs. But you definitely don't want 90 to 100. That's like way too hot. What did it say for Jackson's? 80 to 85? I would say that's accurate. A basking temperature of 80 to 85 is appropriate. Then they go on to specify nighttime temperature. And it just says 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 21 degrees Celsius. This is totally appropriate for a veiled chameleon. You do want a drop in temperature at night that's like healthy for the chameleon. However, Jackson's chameleons, a special care requirement that they have is they require a more drastic drop in temperature. So a Jackson's chameleon at night should be anywhere from 50 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So it needs to be much cooler. So they don't specify the difference between a veiled and a Jackson, so that's a mistake on their part and something that I would personally fix. And then has humidity level listed as 50 to 80%. So the daytime humidity level for a veiled chameleon should be 30 to 40%. So in my opinion, that's much too high. And the humidity level for a Jackson's chameleon should be 30 to 50%. And then speaking of humidity, if you want to do it right, you should be aiming for those levels during the daytime, and at nighttime, you would want your humidity levels. Sorry, I was looking to see where Luna is. She's on my tree. You would want your humidity levels at nighttime to be 70 to 100%. And in case you're watching this because you have a panther chameleon, I just briefly want to talk about their temps and humidity. So a panther chameleon male, you would want a basking temperature of around 85 degrees, give or take. And then for a female panther chameleon, you wouldn't want any hotter than 80 degrees, very similar to the veiled chameleon. And then at nighttime, anywhere from 65 to 70 would be great for a panther. And then the humidity levels for a panther, you would want 50 to 60% during the day and 70 to 100% at night. Okay, next it asks the question, how do I set up a chameleon terrarium? Which is an excellent question to ask and one that probably everyone has. So it gives you a couple different bullet points, so we'll just work through these one by one. Use a well-ventilated 3-foot tall terrarium or screen enclosure with 2 to 3 inches, 5 to 8 centimeters, of coconut fiber, reptile bark, or reptile carpet on the floor. Spot clean weekly and change substrate once a month. Okay, so let's just break this down. So well-ventilated, agreed. 3-foot tall terrarium. I always recommend at least a 4-foot tall terrarium for veiled, panther, Jackson's chameleon, male, female, regardless. 4 feet tall, 2 feet wide. And keep in mind, PetSmart does not sell a 4-foot tall enclosure. They don't. So they're not going to recommend that you buy that size because that way you don't go somewhere else and buy the products. They want you to buy their stuff, right? Same with suggesting coconut fiber, reptile bark, and reptile carpet. These are all things that PetSmart sells, but none of these things are recommended for a chameleon. Like I mentioned before, you want a bare bottom. So that's complete garbage in my opinion, and just a way for them to plug their products. And then it said spot clean weekly and change substrate once a month. So I say spot clean as needed. If you see poop, pick it up. If there's pieces of shed, pick it up. If there's a dead leaf, pick it up. Just clean as needed, and you can just grab whatever it is and toss it out. Bullet number 2. Provide artificial or live branches and plants for hiding and climbing. Okay, I think that's good. However, I would suggest using exclusively live plants. Just stay away from artificial anything. You can use branches from outdoors and just sanitize those. I have a video about that. Use plants that are live. This helps with increasing your humidity levels. This is much safer for your chameleon because if your chameleon eats a plastic plant and then tries to digest it, they're gonna have a really hard time doing that. They can get impacted, which means like everything gets stuck inside them, and then chameleons can actually pass away from that. It says branches should be just larger than your chameleon's grip. I'm always a big proponent of having a different variety of texture, thicknesses. Just stay away from bamboo. Bamboo is pretty slick for chameleons to try and grab onto, but if you just stick with non-sap producing tree branches, you'll be golden. It says include rocks or branches no closer than 8 inches to the heat source for basking. Rocks are completely useless for chameleon. If we think about logically, chameleons are tree dwellers in the wild, so they're gonna be up in the canopies of the trees. They're not gonna be down at the bottom with any sort of rock, so you don't need to get any rocks or hides or hammocks. That's all unnecessary. Just stick to the branches and plants. And then it says basking branches no closer than 8 inches to the heat source for basking. So the distance of your basking branch is going to be dependent on the type of bulb that you use, how far away are your branches to get the correct temperatures that you need. So there's no set in stone, this is how far away your basking branch needs to be. But I would say generally people's basking branches are like 4 to 6 inches away. So don't go on the like hard and fast 8 inches rule. Just do what gives you the correct temperature, like basking temperatures that you need. Next bullet. Chameleons require a temperature gradient, cool bottom and warm top. Use the terrarium temperature chart opposite as a guide. That is totally correct. They do need a temperature gradient, warm at the top, cool at the bottom. They also need a UVB gradient. So stronger UVB, weaker UVB. This is very important and why we work vertically with our chameleons to provide those gradients. Just use the temperature guide like that we already went over, and we kind of discussed how that's not accurate, so I would not follow their chart, but they are correct in providing a gradient. Next it says, use thermometers in the cool and warm areas to measure temperature and one hygrometer to measure humidity. Yep, this is totally accurate. I personally prefer a temperature gun versus like the probe ones because that allows me to be very precise with my temperatures and I can measure the top and the bottom without having to like work probes into my enclosure, and I prefer a digital hygrometer because I find it's more accurate than the little like dial probe ones, but that's just my preference. But they are correct that you will need both of those. It says what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth bullet, mist your chameleon in habitat as needed to maintain humidity or use an automatic fogger. I think this is great. It would probably be helpful to mention that it's important that your chameleon enclosure dries out between mistings, and it's okay that you have highs and lows in your humidity levels. So my recommendation is just to mist once in the morning before lights turn on for 2 to 4 minutes, and then once in the evening before lights turn off for 2 to 4 minutes. But it's totally dependent on the humidity levels that your chameleon requires. Same with using a fogger. It all depends on the environment that you're having to rate for the species of your chameleon, the humidity levels that are natural for where you live. Like, there's no cookie cutter way to provide the correct hydration and humidity for your chameleon. It's like case by case basis. The next bullet says chameleons require a 12-hour light dark cycle in UVB fluorescent lighting to absorb calcium. So yes, you want your lights on for 12 hours and off for 12 hours, and that's all lights. Chameleons need complete darkness to sleep at night, and if you're worried about nighttime temperatures, we kind of talked about that. You shouldn't be needing to provide your chameleon a heat source at night because they actually benefit from that temperature drop. It doesn't say what kind of UVB bulb, it just says UVB fluorescent lighting to absorb calcium. So what you actually want is a T5 high output linear UVB. You'll most likely want the Arcadia 6% or the Reptisun 5.0. I have a whole video on UVB. It's a pretty complicated topic, so feel free to check that out here or in the description box below. Just know if you go to PetSmart, they don't sell the T5 UVB. so you will most likely need to purchase it online. So that's kind of unfortunate and probably why they're not mentioning the correct UVB that you need, because they don't actually sell the product. Super frustrating, but besides the point. Okay, so it's saying, what should I feed my chameleon? Excellent question. It says, insects, gut-loaded crickets, mealworms, and waxworms. Only offer as much as your chameleon can consume by the end of the day. Remove leftovers. Dust insects with calcium supplement 2 times weekly. Okay, let's break this down sentence by sentence. Gut-loaded crickets, mealworms, and waxworms. I 100% agree that your insects should be gut-loaded. However, the gut load that they sell at PetSmart is not sufficient for a chameleon. It's like the orange cubes or like the cricket quencher, whatever the case, like all those are not useful, like the commercial gut loads. Instead, you're better off using fresh fruits and vegetables to feed those to your bugs. Bee pollen is an excellent gut load. That's what you should be using, not those commercial ones. It's saying crickets. Crickets are an excellent feeder for chameleons. Mealworms are not recommended for chameleons because they have high levels of chitin and they have low nutritional value. So do not feed your chameleon mealworms. Feed them something else. And then it says waxworms. Waxworms are okay as a treat, but like only as a treat because they're high in fat. Some other bugs that you could feed your chameleon are going to be dubia roaches, silkworms, superworms, hornworms, black soldier fly larvae, blue bottle flies, black soldier flies, hatch your waxworms into wax moths. But again, PetSmart doesn't sell most of those insects, so why would they recommend that you feed those to your chameleon? And if you only have a PetSmart near you, check online. There's tons of online resources for you to purchase bugs. In fact, I even have a discount code, 10% off dubiaroaches.com, so I'll leave that down in the description box below if you're interested in using that. But there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of places you can buy books. I'll even leave a link of other places you can check out if you want. Okay, it says only offer as much as your chameleon can consume by the end of the day. So if we're under the assumption that you're buying a baby, that's correct. Feed your chameleon once a day, like as much as they can eat, usually 12 to 15 bugs is good for a baby chameleon. But once you have an adult chameleon or even a juvenile chameleon, then you need to cut back their food because chameleon obesity is a very real thing. So I made a whole video on how much to feed your chameleon, so feel free to check that out. I'll link it in the description box. There's gonna be a bunch of links down there. But generally, an adult chameleon can eat 2 to 3 bugs 2 to 3 days a week because you want to keep your chameleon lean, not chubby. So if you do what they're recommending, you will end up with a chubby chameleon. It says dust insects with calcium supplement 2 times weekly. So all your bugs should be dusted. Every single feeding, they should be covered in a supplement. The supplement that you use will vary because sometimes you should be using calcium without vitamin D3. Sometimes you should be using a multivitamin. Sometimes you should be using calcium with vitamin D3. It's a very intricate process that ties into your UVB. Point being is you need to be dusting a lot more than 2 times a week, and it doesn't even specify what kind of calcium supplement you should be using, so I think that's a problem. Okay, next up it says power greens. Offer veiled chameleons as much darky, I can't talk today, dark, leafy, collard, and mustard greens as they can eat in 4 hours. Remove leftovers. So as we discussed, chameleons are insectivores. Veiled chameleons do not need leafy greens or fruits or vegetables, none of that. I intend to do a video on why that's the case, but that's not really the purpose of this video. Just do your research. There's lots of information out there on why this is not necessary. They're insectivores. This is water. Chameleons do not drink water from a dish. Instead, they hydrate by licking water from their skin and habitat. Be sure to mist the chameleon in its habitat daily. I find this hilarious because if we remember back in the Terrarium, glossary section here, it said water dish. So why are we providing a water dish if, quote, chameleons do not drink water from a dish? Which I agree with. They do not drink water from a dish, but then why are you saying provide a dish? Perhaps it's so that you go buy a dish that you don't actually need. It says they hydrate by licking water from their skin and habitat. I've never seen any of my chameleons drink water from their skin. Another thing people think, it's not mentioned here, but something people think is that chameleons absorb water through their skin. That's complete garbage. They're reptiles, not amphibians. So that's not a thing chameleons do. But they do drink water from their habitat. That is correct. They are interested in moving water. So water on the leaves, water on the branches. That's what a chameleon drinks. So half that is correct. The other half is incorrect. It says be sure to mist the chameleon and its habitat daily. I also agree with that. As I kind of mentioned before, how often you mist a day is going to be dependent on your environment. So keep that in mind. Okay, the last section says, how can I keep my chameleon healthy? An excellent question as well. It says, contact a reptile veterinarian or speak with a PetSmart associate if you notice the following symptoms. So definitely contact a reptile veterinarian. I personally would not trust the information from a PetSmart associate. There are very, very, very highly informed, qualified PetSmart associates for reptiles and for chameleons. However, the vast majority of PetSmart associates are reading the exact same thing you're reading, or they've been told incorrect information and they're telling that to you, or they're just guessing, because that's definitely happened before. So make sure you're consulting correct, accurate information and make sure you're verifying your sources. Check out my YouTube channel, check out the Chameleon Academy, check out chameleonforums.com. Those are all verified, correct information resources. Okay, so back to the symptoms. Hiding more than usual. If you buy a baby chameleon from PetSmart and you bring it home, it's going to be hiding from you 24/7. Chameleons naturally hide from us. That's their defense mechanism, so I wouldn't necessarily consider that a concerning symptom. And if a chameleon's hiding, that means they're feeling scared. If a chameleon's sick, they're going to be lethargic and kind of like not have the energy to get defensive and protect themselves. So I'd actually say the opposite would be true. If you had a chameleon that was just like not showing any signs of being defensive, then you might be concerned. If that's like not their normal behavior. It says eating or drinking less, weight loss. So as a chameleon gets older, they will naturally eat less. When a chameleon is getting close to shedding, they will naturally eat less. A female that is getting close to laying will naturally eat less. So I don't think that's a concerning symptom if it's under those certain circumstances. If it's like you have a healthy chameleon and then all of a sudden it has a decrease in appetite, that may be concerning. Also, not seeing your chameleon drink is totally normal. They are shy drinkers. So just because you don't see your chameleon doesn't mean they aren't, and it doesn't mean that's a concerning symptom. If they are, losing weight, that is a legitimate concern and something to be worried about because that could be parasites. Okay, swollen joints or reluctance to move. Definitely, that's definitely problematic. Discharge from the eyes, nose, or mouth. Definitely problematic. Shedding problems, discolored skin. So keep in mind when chameleons shed, they get these little white patches. That's normal, but if there's like super, super dark colors or what looks like a burn on the top of their head or on their back, that's concerning and you should seek out vet treatment. Runny droppings for more than 2 days. There could be a variety of reasons. You could be overhydrating your chameleon. You could have just fed them hornworms. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the runny droppings. And then it says decreased frequency of droppings. Again, as your chameleon is eating less, naturally they will be pooping less. So it's very common as the chameleon gets older for their poop schedule to change. So just keep that in mind with decreased frequency of dropping. But say you have an adult chameleon and they've been in that adult stage for a while and then all of a sudden they're not pooping, they could be impacted, they could be having like internal issues, so that could be problematic. Oh, at the very bottom it says, this care guide contains general information for the proper care of your pet, but it is not comprehensive, is not a substitute for veterinary advice or care. That I agree with. I don't know why it's teeny tiny at the bottom. It should be right up here at the top, but besides the point, because no one's gonna read that and everyone's gonna be like, thank you, PetSmart, this is exactly what I need. A tiny, double-sided pamphlet and I'm good to go. So hopefully this video gives you an idea that, maybe you learned something new. Maybe you learned your information off this. Maybe this is just entertaining for you to see me go through this. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave me any questions or comments down below. Feel free to subscribe so you know when I post a new video, and you can follow Neptune and all my chameleons on Instagram at Neptune the Chameleon. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye! Luna. Come on. Ow! My little nails are so sharp. moment onto the tree.